blow it in the playoffs.
Hello and welcome everyone back to the Puck and Leafs podcast. I'm Joe Choss with my boy Coach Frank, and free agency has begun and we're just getting started. Well, Frankie, 2 days in, and I guess you can say that the Leafs had two very different days. Last night, after day one of free agency, I was almost depressed going to bed after all those fireworks because I just did not like what the Maple Leafs had done in that first day. I mean, let's break that down. At first, we had word of, even before free agency had opened, that the Leafs were going to sign Ryan Reeves. And when I heard that, I said, okay, if it's anything more than $1 million, like, I'm not down for it. And then when we hear it's 1.3 for 3 years, I really didn't like it because for me, he's basically just filling in for the Simmons role. And Simmons you could get for $900,000 again. People are afraid to fight Simmons. And is Reeves going to have an everyday spot in this lineup? Is he going to be playing every day in the playoffs? Is he going to be on the ice when Matthew Tkachuk runs your goalie in the playoffs? Probably not. So I just don't know what exactly he does. I admit that I like having a tough guy on the team because I do feel like it makes other guys play bigger. It's just the role is diminished nowadays. It's not what it once was, 10, 20 years ago. And then the second move that the Leafs made on day one was acquiring John Klingberg, a 1-year deal, $4 million. I didn't like how much money it was. And I'll be the first to admit, I haven't seen a lot of John Klingberg play, but by all accounts, he did not have a great year last year. And what really made me depressed, Frankie, was committing $4 million to him. I knew that kind of backed the Leafs out of the Erik Karlsson sweepstakes, and you and I were both in on that. We wanted the Leafs to try and go for that, but with Klingberg there, who's not good defensively, and Morgan Rielly, who's not great defensively, if you were to get Erik Karlsson, also not the best defensively, you'd have a lot more offense from the back end, but defensively not the greatest. So not happy after day one. And then day two, Brad goes and totally redeems himself. You go to a line from Dumb and Dumber. He acquires Todd Bertuzzi, 1 year, $5.5 million. And then he acquires Max Domi. We're going to see Domi on a Leaf jersey again. It's going to be great. 1 year, $3 million by all accounts. So that was a lot to say, a lot in my opening. How are you feeling after 2 days of free agency, the good and the bad?
I don't think I've ever seen a team go from complete losers to complete winners of free agency.
That's the swings in Leafs Nation.
In a span of like 18 hours. Well, the thing is, Joe, what they've added was what we fans have been, or just like the average hockey guy has been, asking for years. It's that infusion of pesky, players, guys willing to get to the dirty areas. All intents and purposes, you're talking about real pricks to play against, but in your top six, not just guys who can do that, but also put the puck in the net. And, Bertuzzi was our number one target at the deadline last year. And Boston, of all places, Boston comes out and he was outstanding in Boston.
He was, yeah.
So this is starting to change the identity a bit, which I kind of like. But just before we get to that, let's go to day one. My takes were, it was disappointing from the outside looking in, but you had to know they were busy doing something else. And sure enough, that something else was today. If you had a chance to hear or read the presser from Tre-Living after day one, he hinted that, listen, our number of priorities is depth scoring right now. We got our kind of our irons in the fire right now. So you kind of knew something was up. I, for one, did not see this coming. I thought maybe they could get one of the two in Domi Bertuzzi, and I kind of thought it was going to be Domi. The Bertuzzi one kind of caught me off guard, only because I had a feeling he was going to Florida. When Florida traded Duclair to open up some more room, I thought Bertuzzi was a perfect fit in Florida. The way they play, with kind of like
Thank God he didn't.
Yeah, thank God he didn't. I thought like that was a perfect fit. So, anyways, the thing with Reeves, again, it's neither here nor there. In the grand scheme of things, if we're complaining about a guy who makes 1.3 million, it is what it is. The Klingberg thing interests me because if you don't know the story of John Klingberg, this guy was a Norris candidate, believe it or not, when he was with the Dallas Stars. He is when I say pure offensive, like he is an elite puck moving defenseman. I mean, this guy can make a stretch pass. Like I've seen him play. He's an excellent power play quarterback. But that's it. Like this guy is basically Tyson Berry 2.0. You're not getting any defense from this guy.
He is atrocious defensively by all accounts.
Atrocious is being nice. Fucking putrid, man. And you put him on Anaheim last year. I think he led the league. I think he had the worst plus minus in the league last year. How bad Anaheim was. But again, here's a guy, 1-year deal, doesn't hurt you long term. Has nothing to do with the Austin Matthews and Nylander contracts for the following year. Is just a guy who, again, wants to bet on himself. This guy here turned down 8 years, $7 million from the Dallas Stars, fired his agent, and was looking for Miro Heiskanen money, 8x8. And look where he is now. So people would say, $4 million, that's kind of a steal. Like, well, yeah, it's a bit high. But, Joe, look at the premium on right-handed defensemen who can play in your top four, right? Like, that's what they're paying for.
Justin Hall got a big raise this offseason, right? So.
Yeah. He will be on your power play. He may even be your number one power play guy, like at least maybe, as the season goes on. But I think that's why you got him.
If you put him in a position to succeed, that's where he should be. He should be on your power play one, right?
Yeah. I don't think he's going to play with Reilly. I think he'll play more like with a guy like McCabe.
Can't play with Reilly. No way.
If I had to guess. But I'll get to the defense a little later on. But Bertuzzi and Domi, like, how can you not be excited? I'm not jumping out of my chair because I've learned my lesson. But they're much needed pieces where
they're pricks, and this team needs more.
Yeah, what I like about Domi, I see Domi as your kind of your Kerfoot replacement, a guy who can play some center. Most likely is going to play the wing on the third line. If there's any injuries that happen, he's an easy fit in your top six. So I like that because listen. I'm not a big Max Domi fan. I'll be totally honest with you. He was awful in Arizona. Bounced around in Columbus. He was, he couldn't even. I mean, if you remember, he played in Columbus. Exactly. He went to Chicago, played with Patrick Kane, rejuvenated his career. So playing with top players, he was outstanding. And then going over to Dallas, he was excellent in the playoffs, playing in a third line role. So. I'm encouraged by that. So you look at what's out and what's moving in. Bertuzzi is your Bunting replacement in the top six, which is I think for me is a big upgrade. And Domi's your Kerfoot replacement. You probably argue, Joe, that offensively they're a lot better. My concern is defensively they're not very good. And I'm talking about the forwards. Like Bertuzzi and Domi are not very good defensively. So they're going to have to get stronger in other areas. Because even the defense core is one area that really concerns me still at this point.
We'll get to that in a sec. I mean, speaking with Domi, he had his best year of his career. It was in Montreal. So I feel like this is a guy that needs the spotlight, needs the bright lights of a market to really bring the best out of him. And he's grown up in this market, obviously with his dad playing here, being a fan favorite. I think he's wanted to be a Maple Leaf his whole life, most likely, and now he gets his chance, and he's betting on himself like a lot of these other guys are. And we spoke about this a couple of days ago, how we thought that a lot of guys were going to look to get a 1-year deal and then try to do really well in a good situation, and then next year when the cap goes up to try to hit a home run. And 3 of the guys that the Leafs signed are exactly those situations. But Bertuzzi one in particular is fascinating to me because the whole time he was negotiating with Boston, they were always talking about a long-term deal, and they couldn't make it work. And then him and his agent decided to pivot. But by that time, Boston had already committed dollars elsewhere, so they were out of it. And then the Leafs come and swoop up with the 1-year deal. Leafs get very fortunate because Bertuzzi was like the number 2 guy on the free agent board.
Yep.
I love this playoff. I think that's exactly the type of guy that they need. Can play in your top 6, but has that nastiness to him and will drive the other players absolutely crazy.
I'll tell you something, Joe. This 1-year contract benefits the Leafs a lot more than it does Bertuzzi.
Explain how.
Like, you don't know what you're signing Matthews and Nylander to, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You have an idea, but you don't know. So those are the big unknowns. You don't know what the cap is going to go up to next year. You have an idea, but
a projection, but
right?
Not for real. Yeah.
You don't lock yourself into long-term deals with one guy in Bertuzzi who's had a horrendous injury history, right? So last year he was somewhat healthy, but what happens if it goes downhill? How are you going to move that contract later on, right?
Yeah.
And personally, you're also now getting a guy who, in general, guys who are playing in a contract year, you usually get the best out of them because they're trying to hit a home run in their UFA year. So you're getting guys who are on a prove-it deal. So, like, from a team standpoint, those contracts don't affect Matthews and Nylander whatsoever, which I'm happy because you're not locked in
Past
where
this
it
year.
doesn't work out.
That's right.
Yeah, you move on. The one small little piece here is that here we go again with you're bringing in guys and you're making a revolving door of let's call them supplementary players or complementary players to the top.
That's what the NHL's become the last couple of years, though, with the flat cap. Every team is like that, though, Frankie. Tampa, look at Tampa, man. Guys are walking out the door every year of that organization. And you got to find deals on the free agent market and 1-2 year deals, unless you're the Islanders. Then you have no problem signing guys to 7-year deals.
Oh my God.
What is up with that? I don't even want to get into that, but like everybody's signing short-term deals. Islanders 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. But like, why? The Sorokin deal I loved, actually. I thought.
Yeah, well, that's obvious.
Yeah. But
anyways,
I don't know, man.
It was very smart, and again, you got to give Tre-Living some props here. It was a dud yesterday, and he comes back with. I'm just shocked that there wasn't better deals or term, because everything I read was Bertuzzi and Domi wanted term because they could get the money, but it was term that they were looking for, and the AAV that came in. It's pretty fair market value if you think about it.
I think, though, like, if I was a free agent and I was going into this year, I would look to play for the Leafs on a decent amount of money for 1 year, because there's something about it. I don't know what. When you play for the Leafs, everybody's watching. And if you do well, you get a huge bump in salary. I mean, look at Luke Schenn. God bless him. He was awesome in the playoffs. And I would have loved for them to re-sign him, but not at $2.75 million for 3 years like he got. And good for him. He deserved it because he had been playing like basically for league minimum the last 4 years. So in his situation, he had to hit the home run as best as he could financially for his future, his family's future. So I'm happy for him. But look at what playing 2 months with the Leafs did for him. So you look at these other guys, man, do well under the bright lights 1 year and smash it out of the park next year. And it probably won't be with the Leafs, but
Justin Hall got a raise.
Exactly.
Well, you know what, Joe? I before you just said something, you don't know. Like, Domi and Bertuzzi could very well be here beyond this year, depending on what happens with Nylander as well, right?
True.
Maybe these are some of these guys that supplement some of the offense you might lose with Nylander or whatever comes back for him. I'm not saying he's going to be dealt, but Tre-Living's probably set himself up with a backup plan here too, right? So, is it possible that they won't be back the following year? It's possible, but you know what? Who cares? Let's just worry about this year right now. And if, guys like Domi, like, they're replaceable. Bertuzzi, you hope not, but like, these are like guys are not your core pieces. So if they move on, they move on, right? So
that's right. Now let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
So out the door, we've got Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, who was I was upset that they didn't bring him back. That one hurts for $2 million, man. I thought that guy. hit everything that moves and won so many puck battles in the playoffs. I would have loved to bring him back, especially at that ticket.
Yeah.
So out the door, O'Reilly, Achari, um, sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Justin Hall,
Kerfoot,
Alex Kerfoot,
Bunting.
Bunting,
All
and
the
then
UFAs are gone minus Kemp.
yeah, and then in the door is Klingberg,
Reeves.
Bertuzzi, Domi, and Reeves. Are the Maple Leafs better right now than they were when they finished the playoffs back in May?
On paper, yeah,
Really, eh?
they are. Um,
I don't know. See, I don't know.
Forwards, yes. Defense for me is scary right now. I'm gonna say the defense took a step back.
But who did they lose on defense? They lost Justin Hall, and they replaced him with Klingberg.
I think Schenn was a
On
Schenn's
Schenn
a
too,
loss.
yes, yeah.
Schen's a loss. If you're taking out Schenn and adding in Klingberg, you better be able to score a lot of goals. You know what I mean? There isn't. I look at, listen. We can make fun of Hall all you want. He blocked a lot of shots on the penalty kill.
Yep.
Kill a penalty. Who are you going to pivot to for that now? Is it Liljegren? Is it Brody? Maybe this defense is not done yet.
Let's speak about that, because when Brad Tre-Living took over, he kind of hinted at he wants a bigger, meaner defense, and so far it's John Klingberg, who is anything but big and mean. So I mean, he's big but not mean at all. So. And they've got very limited cap space at this point. I mean, right now they're over the cap, not factoring in Murray's potential buyout and Muzzin's LTIR money. Where do they find the money to acquire more defensemen? We're most likely going to see a trade here or there.
Yeah, it's going to be money in, money out. Again, you always go back to your old stomping grounds. Still, there's a lot of smoke going on in Calgary. It's probably not going to be Hanifin, because Hanifin has already stated he wants to play in the U.S.
Zadorov?
That's my guy. That's the target. Nikita Zadorov, who hits like a brick shithouse, and he's right up there with Schenn in terms of hits by a defenseman. Clears the net, has no offense, but you really don't need offense from him. But he is a comparable to, he's better than Justin Hall, but he's in that kind of category. That's a guy I can see him bringing in, and you can probably flip him I don't know what he's making, to be quite honest with you, but there's a guy you could probably fit, maybe like Yarncroc. Here's another guy I see him like now doesn't really fit the team per se. He was a guy that Dubas he's always liked, and now that he's there, he actually played for Tre-Living, if you recall. So Yarncroc played for Seattle, was dealt to Calgary, and didn't do a damn thing when he got there. Like, he was a
that is true. Yes.
And I don't think Tre-Living's a big fan of this guy. So and he's making $2.1 million, Joe. So here's a guy that could be dealt to San Jose, or a team that needs to get to the floor. You give him a pick back, whatever it is.
You really have to give him a pick to take a guy.
Whatever it is. Joe, 2.1 is a very manageable cap hit.
Very manageable.
Now there's extra forward. So, you got like Lafferty can play in the third line, Robertson. So I see Yarncroc as a guy that's like, very expendable now. If you're going to look at bringing in a defenseman or acquire a defenseman, there's going to be some room for that. So I'm going to hold off my judgment until I see the final product. But this D is not done yet.
And in terms of the goaltending, I wondered why they didn't buy out Matt Murray in the first buyout window. But then I was talking to a friend of mine, and he actually raised a good point in that if you were to buy out Matt Murray in that first buyout, now you're going into an arbitration case with Samsonov, and you're giving him a lot of leverage because there's no other goalie.
Correct.
Right? There's just Wall back there.
Correct.
So with Murray still on the roster, they've at least got that backup there, so you're not giving them that leverage. I thought that was an interesting point, but I still do think they try to work it out with Samsonov and possibly buy out Murray in the second buyout window, which would happen in August.
Yeah.
Or they look someone to acquire that deal, which I can't see them trying to get rid of more picks. They already have too few of them. So
goaltending is an interesting part here because Samsonov had. I think he exceeded a lot of expectations last year. Won of a playoff round, arguably he's the starter of this team. But he's probably going to get in that 3, maybe 3.5 range, which is fair. He's definitely is worth that. But at the same time, too, it's like, do you make a play for a goalie, an established goalie? And
like let's say Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah.
We haven't had a top of the line goaltender like that since Eddie Belfour.
But again, Joe, now you're looking at this team. You don't have the assets to get him. The only way you're going to get a guy like Hellebuyck.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you the question. So I counter you the question. Are you willing to deal? Because this would probably be the trade. Are you willing to deal William Nylander for Connor Hellebuyck? I'm not saying what the deal would be, but as the two main parts of the deal, would you rather have Nylander, knowing that you have trouble scoring goals, or a goalie like Connor Hellebuyck, who on most nights is going to steal you games, right? Like
I don't know. That's tough because behind this defense, I feel like they're going to need some better goaltending to keep them in games. But I still love Willie. I don't want to trade him for Hellebuyck. I'm wondering if you could possibly do something with, if you're Winnipeg, maybe you look at Samsonov as a guy who could be your potential goalie of the future. Just had he's still young, had a good year. Maybe you put together a package with Samsonov in there with, a Robertson and Topi Niemela, something like that could entice them. But then the problem is Hellebuyck's going to want a new deal after this coming season.
That's the problem.
That is the big problem, and it's probably what's holding it back because he's going to want in that 9 to 10 range, even though he probably slots into where Sorokin just slotted in, which is just under $9 million, right? Over that 7-8 years.
He also got 8 years, so obviously the more years.
That's right.
But he's going to.
But Hellebuyck's older. Hellebuyck will be 30 at that time.
At the same time too, Joe, how are teams not lining up for Hellebuyck? The market just isn't there right now.
Yeah.
You thought
maybe
Jersey,
the Jets keep him for the year.
Hey, listen, the one team I'm scared about if they grab Hellebuyck is Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree. They should be all over him.
Oh my God. And have Devin Levi play behind this guy. Oh my God.
That's right.
They would make them instant playoff
contenders. Yep.
So sometimes, Joe, you got to think maybe it's best you take a run at a guy before someone else in your division gets him. And the last thing you want to do is be put Connor Hellebuyck, in the playoffs or something like that. So listen, I'm not saying it's a possibility, but you've now taken this team so far. Can you go that extra mile and say what is a need for this team? But Joe, my personal thoughts is you just saw Vegas win a Stanley Cup with 5 goalies. I'm more of the guy to build the team around them more than just rely on the one goalie to steal you games. I thought Samsonov was fine. Wall is doing okay. That's a nice tandem. So I think you got to strengthen your defense, make that the central focus of this team moving forward. And I said in the past, to me, goaltending is the new NFL running back. It's done by committee. You're not paying a lot of guys to do the job.
It's so interesting because it's so important. You could steal a game in both sports, but they're so replaceable almost most of the time, right?
Exactly.
Even a guy like Hellebuyck, who's one of the best in the league, he's coming up to his 30-year-old age, said he doesn't want to re-sign him in Winnipeg, and it's okay, we got to find a way to cut this guy loose or get the best deal possible. So I wanted to ask you before we get on out of here and move on, but I saw a really interesting tweet, and a lot of people were talking about this. The Ryan O'Reilly not signing with the Leafs. By all accounts, the Leafs offered him similar money, similar term, and he doesn't re-sign. He goes to Nashville, who's kind of in a rebuilding phase because they just bought out Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson. I thought someone on Twitter had a really good tweet, and I'm going to ask you to respond to this. Ryan O'Reilly just left his hometown team that's in win now mode to sign with a rebuilding team in the West offering the same deal the Leafs did. There's a cancer in that locker room. I don't know if there's a cancer in the locker room, but something ain't right here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense for a guy who loved his time with the Leafs, by all accounts, is what he claims, to not re-sign if the money's the same and the term is relatively the same. makes no sense. I would understand it if he went and signed with Tampa
Mhm.
or Colorado or
Boston.
Boston. It would make sense. Okay, he's going to another team who's got a shot, but Nashville, really?
I've been reading things too that he's got a house there. He's a big country music fan, or he wants to start working on his music. That's such bullshit.
Come on.
Like, come on, guys. Like, let's get to the. Listen, he did an interview. I want to say it was TSN because they had the rights to the Canadian Open, but he was at the Canadian Open for the Pro-Am day or one of the days there, and TSN had him on. And he came out straight out and said, listen, yeah, it was disappointing, all the cliches, but he came out to say that he would have done things differently with the lineup. He really didn't get into specifics, but he said he had ideas on what he would have done differently, and that part was frustrating. And I think that's looking right at the bench boss. I think it's like they say that he was a little upset having different line mates every night, not knowing really where he was going to play. I think he wanted to be used in a different way, which is fine. He's entitled to that. But I just didn't think he's a big fan of Keefe. And somebody had an interesting tweet as well, and I read it was like paraphrasing: the Leafs chose Keefe over O'Reilly. Right? If you want to think of it like that, I have no doubt that if Dubas was still here, O'Reilly and Ochari would be Leafs. That's my feeling, but that's just my opinion. You can't really tell for sure. But yeah, that one stung, Joe. Personally, it stung because I had to explain to my son, who purposely chose number 90 for his spring hockey jersey because he fell in love with Ryan O'Reilly because somebody took number 34, but that's another story. He was in tears. He was in tears. And hey, it is what he's only 6, but I said, buddy, welcome to Leaf Nation. If you want to understand,
full of heartbreak. Get used to it.
Yeah. But hey, Joe, the interesting thing here for Nashville is he's their number 1 center right now. So I don't know I don't think they're done yet, but like that's an interesting position to put yourself in, especially when he could have had the same AAV, but I think less year. I think Toronto only offered 2 or 3 from what I understood.
I heard,
yeah. So, hey, what's done is done.
All right. So you can't lose the offseason on the first day of free agency, but you can't win it on the second day either. I would say we're in let's see mode from here on out. Getting the Austin Matthews and William Nylander extensions done, I think that would push the offseason more to a win.
Agreed.
So let's wait and see what happens with those, especially the Matthews one. And it would be great to keep Willie around as well, because I think he's proven 3 playoffs in a row now that he could produce in the playoffs when stuff gets tougher and there's no room out there. He still produces. So I guess that's it from now, unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up or talk about.
No, I think now you're exactly what I said. What you said there, Joe. Wait and see mode. I think you're probably going to maybe see a little more depth signings here and there, like guys that they could probably get on, 750, 775.
A lot of deals going to be out there. A lot of deals to be had.
There's going to be a lot of guys out there.
Like musical chairs. Everybody's just trying to get a seat at this point.
Exactly. And I think that's what you'll probably see at this point. They need to fill out the Marlies roster as well. So you'll probably see a bunch of guys forward, defense for sure being signed. But I think if anything they do with the Nylander deal, I have a feeling that's going to be done first before Matthews. And I can see this being done like even closer to training camp. I don't think I think they're sitting pretty right now, to be quite honest with you, only because I think let them wait for the free agency crop, like have people swing and miss on free agency because there's really not much left. There's a few guys out there, but when it starts to get quiet and guys kind of missed out on free agency is when they start getting desperate for trades, right? Like I think the domino has now fallen that Bertuzzi's gone, Domi's gone, a lot of these bigger, O'Reilly's gone. Guys still need to get to the floor. Guys also need to improve their roster. How do you do that? Via trade. So Tre-Living is also going to have to get the value of Nylander to where he wants it to make a deal when it's just supply and demand, right? So Joe, I don't think they're going to deal him at the end of the day, only because they've made these moves to ensure to get more scoring, not lose it, right? So, and we will have no idea what's coming back in a deal for Nylander. So we couldn't sit here and say, oh yeah, they're going to get back, this guy. I was saying to myself the other day, I saw an interesting trade proposal with Carolina where it had Seth Jarvis and Brett Pesce come back for Nylander. I'm saying to myself, is Seth Jarvis going to pick up the slack that Nylander has?
No chance.
No,
and
right?
I'm a big Seth Jarvis fan. I believe in his
Yeah.
potential, but I don't see him reaching what Nylander is currently at this point.
Correct. So, not even going to speculate, not even going to go down that road. We did it on the last episode. Just I don't see it. If they're going to make a run at it, they need Nylander, and they need to sign him. So, get on it.
You're here. All right, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. And we'll be back maybe next week if more things start to happen with Leafs Nation. So stay tuned and look out for more of our videos and more podcasts on Spotify. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Joe Choffs with my boy, Coach Frank. Take care, everyone, and let's go Leafs.